Let us start here with this comment from Alex James, and I'll go about 30 minutes, by the way. Alex says, Gil, do you think Novak should do a sit-down interview with someone and explain everything that has happened and let everyone know his side of the story? Or should he keep quiet for a while and let the dust settle on this unfortunate situation? It's a good question. And by the way, hopefully this will be the last day of discussing Novak. And then we can move on, cover the tournament, and revisit the Novak situation, which I could say is over. It's not. It's kind of ongoing with other tournaments and vaccine mandates that could lie ahead in Rome, at Roland Garros, at the US Open. I'm not really sure what's going on in the UK for Wimbledon. I have no knowledge of that, but it feels like this story will continue. But while the Australian Open progresses, hopefully we will not be talking about this at all. But I have not spoken on the channel since the final decision was made by Justice Alsop that obviously ruled in favor of the minister's cancellation of Novak's visa. I'm not going to get into it really, and I'll just answer the question, which is, should Novak do an interview? I think no. I think not. First of all, off the top of my head, I don't know that there's a lot to clear up. I think because of the nature of court records and how court records are public, and because we've had two trials where basically everything has been laid out, we've also had a lot of reporting done on everything that's happened. I don't know that there's anything that's really unclear in this situation. I feel like everyone has a good idea of what's gone on and what's happened. One question I can think of that will be asked to Novak that he hasn't needed to answer yet is, what were his plans? Was he planning on skipping the Australian Open before he tested positive on December 16th? That's something that we don't know. But all in all, I can't think of too many things that really require clearing up at this point that I feel like it would be wise for Novak to inject himself into the spotlight again, because quite frankly, there is surely a fatigue when it comes to this story. It lasted over 10 days. There were twists, there were turns. It was in the international media. You know, it broke through the tennis bubble. And I really do feel like the tennis community certainly is really ready to try to take a break from this, try to focus on. Let's move on to SJ's comment. SJ says, is it kind of unfair that they didn't reshuffle the draw with Novak being gone? Now Novak's quarter, which was already a little bit lacking, is no one's quarter, and it's literally wide open, whereas the other quarters, such as Zverev's and Tsitsipas's, feel like the ATP finals. This was interesting, and then I'll get to the second part of SJ's comment. They already delayed the order of play, but the way the timeline worked, it was getting really, really late, and they needed to finalize the order of play and thus, or therefore, finalize the draw. And I really don't think you can let one player hold up that process. I don't agree with that. I don't care who it is, or obviously I don't care who it is, because we're talking about the number one seed and the 9-time champion, and I don't think it was appropriate for the Australian Open to delay the order of play for one player, regardless. And stuff happens is kind of my take on this. When it comes to the draw, it's not always perfectly symmetrical. It's not always perfectly fair. You have situations, for example, such as the 5 seed being in the same quarter as the 1 seed, right? That could happen because you have chance, you have randomness in a draw, and stuff happens. Players get injured, players have to withdraw, players might get COVID at some point, players get upset. You can't really worry, in my opinion, and bend over backwards to try to make the draw perfect. The reality is, to win the Australian Open, you're probably going to need to beat a lot of really, really good players. Or in the case of Novak's quarter, now you have an opportunity for a Gael Monfils, for a Tommy Paul, for a Pedro Martinez, for a, I I think Carreno Busta is in the other. Yeah, never, not Carreno Busta. But the players I just mentioned, Bublik perhaps, Monfils Bublik in the second round. That should be interesting. I favor Monfils. You have Oscar Alta, who's had some good runs and is a very interesting player who had a good 2021. Lorenzo Sonego, yet to really make a deep run at a major. Am I like mad that these players have opportunities now? I'll throw in Kecmanovic if he's a better player than he was last year. Am I mad that these players have an opportunity here? Not really. It is what it is. Such is life. I can't get too upset about that. And it's never going to be something that really bothers me, or I think is something that should be really emphasized, that you have perfect draw symmetry. And so I just want to pay this off now by talking about Djokovic's section of the draw. And then again, we will move on from Djokovic and probably won't revisit this topic for a very, very long time. But let me go to Matt Bradley's comment. It says, the first quarter genuinely looks like a challenger event. Surely this is Monfils' time to shine. Could he pull off an upset and win? He is my pick, I believe, well, I think it's Tommy Paul, but it's definitely Monfils or Tommy Paul as my pick. And if I were to choose one, and I haven't really forced myself to do that in my mind yet, I would probably choose Paul. Again, I'm not very trusting when it comes to Monfils' ability to just hold up physically and mentally in best of five. But I will say this about Monfils as a whole. At the time he lost his motivation after the pandemic hit, he was losing some speed, losing his legs, but playing some of the best tennis of his life. And that's because his shot selection was the best it had ever been, because as he's matured and as he's lost a little bit of his athletic explosiveness, he has naturally started to rely on his ball striking a little bit more, and he's attacking short balls better, and his court position is better, and he's not making rallies physical for no reason as much as he used to. He's playing much smarter. So I'm a fan of what Gael Monfils' game has turned into. And I really do think that he has an opportunity to continue to play well in his old age, which might sound like a bit of a hot take because he is someone who has traditionally relied on his athleticism. But again, his point construction throughout his career has been terrible. His shot selection throughout his career has been terrible. That stuff's getting better. And I think that can kind of offset the loss of speed from Monfils' perspective. But I like Tommy Paul. I think he's in an advantageous section. Had a good win against Kukushkin in round one. He's coming forward. He's a really good athlete. He's physical. He absorbs pace very well, redirects well on the backhand. His forehand is kind of the key, that it needs to be reliable. It needs to be consistent. It isn't always, but he's come forward a lot now, and he's used his athleticism at the net, and he's finishing well. He's always defended well. He's got a great second serve, which I like a lot. So I kind of feel like he makes the quarterfinal. But by far the favorite to reach the semifinal in Djokovic's quarter, and my Monday match analysis, all those things really are unchanged. So my main points were that in my last Monday match analysis, my main points were that everybody looks terrible. Everybody made mistakes here. Nobody comes out looking good. And I stand by that. And I went through all the mistakes that everyone has made in this situation to create this mess. I think that's true. And then in my last video, I talked about ultimately that his visa was recanceled. And my argument was basically that this has turned from something that was rule-based and guideline-based to something that's become political, which in my opinion is unfortunate, regardless of if you agree with the politics, which you can, if you disagree with the politics, which you can. It just became very clear to me that this the sequence of events became very politically driven, which in my opinion was unfortunate. Okay? And that's it. Let's move on from Novak. Let's get to everything else. This comment from Mary Sky. What do you think about the Netflix thing and the fact they already were filming Stefanos and Matteo, but Zverev didn't even know about it? I'm afraid they're going to create rivalries that don't even exist like they did in F1. Overall, really happy about it. So funny. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Drive to Survive. I just want to throw that out there. I think it's great. It made me kind of an F1 fan. I've been pretty bad about watching races live, I will say, but I'm into it. I love it. And I'm really, really happy that they're trying this. There's no guarantee that it's going to be a success. Just because it worked in F1 doesn't mean it's going to work in tennis. Doesn't mean that everybody's going to love it or that it's going to be well done. But the production team is the same. A lot of the same producers that were involved in Drive to Survive. And tennis lacks access and storytelling, and that is what changed for F1. They took down the curtains, they took down the secretiveness and the behind closed door stuff, and they were like, we are giving the fans access. We are going to tell stories. We are going to show these personalities, and we're going to tell stories in a way that is kind of a full disclosure. And in tennis, I think there is that's completely necessary. And the dynamic that will likely transpire from this kind of content being out there is there's going to be new fans created. There's going to be new attachments that are created to players from things that are outside of what they do on the court and what they do in terms of their results. You know, I don't think that there's going to be as much of a, because there's no really super popular players on tour that don't win a ton. The most popular players, besides, I guess, like Kyrgios, who's brought a ton of attention to himself off the court, the most popular players are just the best players. And I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. I think in a sport like MMA, where the media is provided a lot more access and there's a lot more personality with the fighters, you have a lot of fighters who lose a lot of fights and they're not great champions, but they're incredibly popular. Look at Nate Diaz, for example. I know in F1, Lando Norris has a massive fan base because people like the guy. It doesn't mean he wins every race. He doesn't. He's not one of the best who... He's not Verstappen, he's not Hamilton, but people love him because because of storytelling and because of access and because of personality. And that is what is going to happen here. So I'm going to have more thoughts about this. I'm going to have more coverage of this. I want to really stay on top of this story. And but until then, that's all I want to say. In terms of Stefanos, yeah, it's a reality show. No, it's not a reality show. No, it is a reality show, isn't it? Yeah. So they are going to find drama. That's their job. But fans love drama. They love it. And they sometimes pretend not to love it, but they love it. Here's a comment from Sherlock Holmes. 1698.